Yo, what up? We are back for video number 2. In this episode, I want to discuss, how I was growing up, some of the struggles that I dealt with as a kid. And I'm sure somebody out there can relate. And it's important, for me, I find that it's important to put this message together to be able to help somebody, whether it's now, in a few years, even years down the line. Who knows how long this video will stay in the universe. And that's why I get so pumped up to put these videos together, because I know they're going to be out there and it'll reach somebody one day. I have full faith that these videos will reach somebody as I try to help somebody with some of the struggles that I dealt with in life. I was a little bit worried I was not going to put this video together because I just came from the market, got out of the market, and had a flat tire, and then it was just like a battle just to make sure that I get this video put together. I like to have everything done on the same day. I don't pre-record it. I record it same day, put it out within the next hour. I'll have it out in the universe. So taking it back to the early 1990s, I was raised in Southgate, California. It's a south side part of Los Angeles. And this is in the 90s when the gang culture was very, very popular. I remember growing up, there was a gang on every block. There was a gang at the end of my block, and then there was a gang on the next block. And these gangs back in the 90s, they were pretty big. That was the thing to do. They were popular. They ran the streets pretty much from my little point of view. At a young age, that was the culture. That was what you wanted to do. You wanted to associate with that because they had the money, they had the cars, they had all the attention. And that was something that I always looked up to. And I immediately surrounded myself with that culture at school, in junior high school. Starting even in elementary, I was gravitating towards that lifestyle, towards, friends who had parents who were involved in the gang culture, and that was kind of my surroundings within my family as well, where we grew up. And I gravitated towards that. And I gravitated toward it's a negative lifestyle. It was a negative lifestyle. Now that I look back at it, it was a way of life, a way of thinking in a negative way, whether it was constantly, alcohol, drugs, gang culture is, it can be a positive environment, but it can be a very negative environment. So I don't want to get too deep into that. That's a whole another story, and there's just certain things that I won't touch, just because it comes with a lot of responsibility and I stay away from that. I want to tell my story and what I learned and how it can help others. So, not to get off topic, but how I ended up in juvenile hall was through that, surrounding myself with negative friends, being violent. I remember in junior high school around the 8th grade, I ended up getting into a fight with an adult across the street from my school. We used to all hang out there, all the buddies, and I ended up getting in a fight with one of the cooks from the kitchen because he was telling us to get out of there. We were causing too much chaos, which we were. But me being the hard-headed that I was, me and my buddy ended up fighting with one of the cooks, and next thing I know, the cops came, they pressed charges, the cook pressed charges on me, and I ended up in jail that day. And that was the first time I ever ended up in jail. I was scared, to be honest. I was really scared. I was 13 years old. I had just turned 13 years old. And it was like a shock, just to be I was in control. I couldn't move. I couldn't do much inside a little cell. I had to ask for permission. I was hungry. It was a shock to me. It was very boring as well. There was no TV, and just to go on and so forth with what you can't have when you're in jail. So I remember that happened, that incident happened. They put me on probation. I got released. They put me on probation. And from there, it was a downfall. I just started messing up. I stopped going to school. It was partying, and I was on probation. So it got worse and worse and worse. As you know, my mom, who I'm still very involved with today, probably remembers because she had to deal with this. She was my guardian. And it just got worse. You know, I just pretty much lost control of myself. I did whatever I wanted. You know, I surrounded myself with my friends. I was constantly ditching school. I was going out with my friends, drinking, partying, smoking weed. Eventually it caught up. I went to court one day and the judge had enough. He said, "You're not going to school. Your grades are bad. You know, your probation officer has nothing but negative reports. You have positive marijuana test. I'm sending you away for a year." And I was just like, I was in shock. So they sent me away for a year. I started in juvenile hall. I was there for a couple months. And that was probably one of the most scariest experiences because it was a constant fight. I was a short kid, you know, a skinny short kid. And I remember when you went to juvenile hall back then, you know, they used to just send you in there with you know, your regular clothes. I remember I kept having to fight to keep my shoes. So like they kept wanting to take my shoes. So it was like a constant fight, you know, and it was uncomfortable. It was a scary experience, you know. In juvenile hall, it's every man for themselves, or every kid for themselves. We're kids. Constant fighting. And eventually I got a meeting from a counselor or something, and they're like, "Hey, we have an opportunity for you to go to a program. Like, are you interested? A placement?" And I was like, "Okay." They're like, "It's either placement or camp." I'm like, tell me more." So I got more details. Camp just sounded like a boot camp, so I'm just like, I'll go to placement. So I ended up taking the placement. I did like 8 months in this placement, Boys Republic in Chino Hills. That place was beautiful. Like we could do whatever we want. If we acted good for a certain amount of times, we got home passes. We could go home on the weekend. So I finished off that whole year. I ended up staying in that placement, which was Disneyland, and I kind of milked it. You know, I was getting involved in a bunch of stuff there. You know, it was from I seen people there that I knew, and we were going home and bringing weed back, and it got really bad. But nobody knew but us. So I eventually graduated from there. I got my home passes and everything. I had a lot coming to me. I started running, you know, the dorms that I was in. And I left with high honors. Got out at 16. At this point, I was already 16 years old. Got out. And at this point, at 16 years old, I got out and I got, you know, back introduced with my buddies. "Hey, how you been? I haven't seen you guys in a year." At this point, they were into methamphetamines. So I got involved in methamphetamines. At 16 years old, I started doing meth, and that turned my life upside down. I was already an energetic person. So, and you know, I was a wild thinker, I was ADHD, like the doctors try to call it. So the meth it slowed me down, but also excited me. And then eventually, you know, as time went on and I continued to use it, I just turned into like this very, very negative person. We're jumping too far ahead. So after doing drugs, getting out and doing the meth at 16, it progressed. You know, we're going 8 years of just doing meth. But when I started doing meth, you know, school and everything was just like, that was it. Like I was up all night on meth. And when it came time to go to school, I didn't go to school. At this point, my mom had already kind of just like, she couldn't handle me. So she sent me to live with my grandmother. My grandmother pretty much, you know, she did the best that she could. So my grandma was also working. So I pretty much was doing whatever the hell I wanted. I was getting high, not going to school, still on probation. Second time around, judge was like, "You're not going to school." I was out for maybe 6 to 9 months, and he ended up sending me back. 6 to 9 months, he ended up sending me back. Went back to juvenile for the second time at 16 and a half. And at that point, I was heavily into meth. So I was like, I could go back to that placement. It's cool. Sure enough, I was able to go back to placement, the same placement that I came from. As soon as I got there, I had buddies there. And it was just that second experience. It was, at that point, a lot of the kids my age were doing meth. So I connected with some people. Next thing I know, we were using meth, selling meth, all from this placement, which was a really good placement. But also being productive, you know, playing sports, you know, going to school. They had church services. It was just like very, very good place. I think it's still around. It's been around for 80 years or so. So at that point, I finally got out and I got a placement and I was already turning 18. So I got out, I was 17 and some change, and the judge was like, hey, you know, if you continue down this path, you're going to go to jail, to men's jail. You're already becoming an adult. Sure enough, I got out. I didn't even attempt to go back to school. At that point, I had already dropped out of school mentally, you know. Stopped going to school when I got out, and it was just all downhill from there, which I will discuss that in another YouTube video. But overall, after everything I just discussed of what I went through, you know, if anybody has any comments and maybe I missed something, you definitely want to drop a comment. I'll always respond. But what I went through, everything that I went through, negative energy, this was, we're talking about from the age of 12 and a half to 18. That was all just a big drugs, you know, negative mindset. You know, now that I'm older and I look back at it, I feel like maybe I was really like possessed by like a negative energy, just because of I was just like making mistake after mistake, like intentionally just like doing bad things, knowing that I was gonna get a bad outcome from it, and I didn't care. I had no cares in the world. I didn't care what happened. You know, I didn't care about death. I didn't care about overdose. I didn't care if nobody liked me. I didn't care about anything. Nothing. I didn't care about your feelings. I didn't care about if I stole something from you. That meth really turned me into a straight demon. Like, I didn't care. I really didn't, you know. And now looking back at it, it's a hard place to get out of. It's extremely hard when you're that young and you just don't care. It's hard, you know. There's nothing that anybody could do. A lot of my family try to help me. They try to get me support, you know, rehab, and it's just like I just wasn't ready at that point. I had like a death wish to just destroy my life and end up dead, you know. And now looking back at it, that's what it really was. I wanted to just die because I was not doing anything. I used to be up for weeks at a time without sleep. I used to just use meth, and I'd be up until I was like a zombie, and just I couldn't really even process thoughts. I would just be up, you know, for long periods of time. And I'm grateful that I still have some sense to be able to live a day-to-day life just based off all the damage I did at a very young age. And I put this out here to let you know that when you put yourself in those situations, it's extremely hard, you know, to get out of there. It really took me growing up and getting my prison term to really have time to think and grow up, mature. You know, there was a lot that came with doing my prison term at the age of 24 to 30. And that was the time frame where I really grew up and realized that I could do something better with my life. And you know, it's I don't want to miss out on anything. I wanted to touch all subjects there was a lot of things I wanted to discuss, but I didn't write any of them down. But I tried to remember everything that I went through. You know, there's a lot more to it, but I want to discuss it in another section. You know, there's some of the emotions that I went through, suicidal thoughts that I went through when I was on meth. Because it got really bad, not sleeping for a week and using drugs, you know, and I was so young. I really went through some emotional breakdowns and suicide attempts. And there's still another story that needs to be touched on that I hope can help somebody. You know, as we don't really pay attention, but the suicide rates are pretty high. They always have been, of people who just end their life. So I'm glad that I can speak on my experience and hope that it helps somebody. But if you have any questions, again, drop a comment. That was just a little glimpse of a lot of the stuff that I went through. It was not easy, but it definitely made me the person I am today. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not proud of it either, but it is what it is. It is what I went through, and I want to share it because I owe myself, you know, the right to share what I've been through to help others. You know, that's the goal here. If you have any questions, hit me up. Smash out another day. If you need help with your fitness, nutrition, mindset, hit me up. Krazy Fitness. We're all about self-improvement. You know, we use our past to create a better future. You know, I got that tattooed right here. Respect the past, create a better future. And that's what we're about. That's why we get results so fast, because we've been through so many struggles in life that when we finally set our mind to it and we're focused, we can accomplish anything. And that's the only thing we're going to do. We're going to continue to move up and up and use the past to help build and create who we are today and who we're going to become. So let's get it.